Mind itself is not enough. Even its largest play of intelligence creates only a qualified half-life. A surface mental knowledge of the physical universe is a still more imperfect guide. For the thinking animal, it might be enough, but not for a race of mental beings in labor of a spiritual evolution. Even the truth of physical things cannot be entirely known, nor can the right use of our material existence be discovered by physical science and an outward knowledge alone, or made possible by the mastery of physical and mechanical processes alone. To know, to use rightly, we must go beyond the truth of physical phenomenon and process. We must know what is within and behind it. For we are not merely embodied minds. There is a spiritual being, a spiritual principle, a spiritual plane of nature. Into that we have to heighten our force of consciousness, to widen by that still more largely, even universally and infinitely, our range of being and our field of action. To take up by that our lower life and use it for greater ends and on a larger plan, in the light of the spiritual truth of existence. Our labor of mind and struggle of life cannot come to any solution until we have gone beyond the obsessive need of an inferior nature, integralized our natural being in the being and consciousness, learned to utilize our natural instruments by the force and for the joy of the spirit. Then only can the constitutional ignorance, the ignorance of the real, sorry, then only can the constitutional ignorance, the ignorance of the real will of existence from which we suffer, change into a true and effective knowledge of our being and becoming. For what we are is spirit. At present, using mind predominantly, life and body subordinately, with matter for our original field, but not our only field of experience, but this is only at present. Our imperfect mental instrumentation is not the last word of a possibility, for there are in us dormant or invisibly and imperfectly active other principles beyond mind and closer to the spiritual nature. There are more direct powers and luminous instruments. There is a higher status. There are greater ranges of dynamic action than those that belong to our present physical, vital, and mental existence. These can become our own status, part of our being. They can be principles, powers, and instruments of our own enlarged nature. But for that, it is not enough to be satisfied with a vague or an ecstatic ascent into spirit, or a formless exaltation through the touch of its infinity. Their principle has to evolve, as light has evolved, as mind has evolved, and organize its own instrumentation, its own satisfaction. Then we shall possess the true constitution of our being, and we shall have conquered the ignorance.
Okay, so he has told us, he has given us actually three imperfections, three ignorances. Now he is discussing the constitutional ignorance. Okay. Earlier in this chapter, he had mentioned the absolute ignorance. We don't know from where we come. The supreme, the divine, is the origin of ourselves. So that we don't know at all. That's the first ignorance. Second ignorance is the time ignorance. We don't know our past lives. Okay? And constitutional ignorance. What are we constituted of? We are not constituted only of the body, mind and life. We are constituted by the subtle senses, the intraconscious, the subconscious, the superconscious, and even the environment. Okay? That also is part of us. So all that's what is discussing here. So in this para, the constitutional ignorance is discussed. I have told you that there are 4 more ignorances which he will discuss in another chapter. Now I read each sentence and we'll see. So, for mind itself is not enough. This is something that is so obvious to those who are in the either the philosophical field or the spiritual field. We know that the mind is not enough. But this is not something very evident to most people in Europe and even in India. They don't know that mind is not the last instrument of knowledge. Okay? In spite of it being so imperfect, we feel that that's a final. It is not the final. For mind itself is not enough. So you may wonder why Sri is stressing so much the obvious facts. It is not obvious to everybody. Okay? It's obvious only to those who know about Sri and those who have studied a little bit of Advaita, Vedanta. Even its largest, take all those European scientists, okay? They think that mind is the last. Okay? The evolution has reached its peak in the development of mind. Okay? But mind itself is not enough. Even its largest play of intelligence creates only a qualified half-light. It's only a half-light. Okay? Even science, which knows so much, knows only the appearances of things, nothing more than that. A surface mental knowledge of the physical universe is still more imperfect guide. Okay? A surface mental knowledge. Mental knowledge can be physical, and mental knowledge can also be philosophical and psychological to a certain extent. But he's saying that the surface mental knowledge of the physical world is absolutely most imperfect. Even our mental philosophical knowledge is very imperfect, but the physical knowledge of physical things is the most imperfect of all. A surface mental knowledge of the physical universe is still more imperfect. He is using the word still more because there can be a mental knowledge of philosophy, which is not knowledge of physical universe. Even that is limited, this is even more limited. For the thinking animal, it might be enough. Just knowing what is what, where its food is, where its mates are, all that is enough for it. But not for a race of mental beings in labor of a spiritual evolution. In labor means on the way, was struggling to go to a spiritual evolution. Not all mental beings, huh? The animal the thinking animal is man, undeveloped. And the mental being in labor of spiritual evolution is the developed man. Okay. The language is a little, but that's what it means. When he says thinking animal, mass of humanity which is busy only with physical things. And race of mental beings in labor of spiritual evolution are those who are conscious of many things far above the average human being. So even the truth of physical things cannot be entirely known, nor can the right use of the material existence be discovered by physical science, and an outward knowledge alone are made possible by the mastery of physical and mechanical processes alone. Now this is a very interesting sentence we'll take up. He is saying, even the truth of physical things cannot be entirely known. So science has known a lot. Science has known now how to go to the moon, how to go beyond. But we know what physical science has discovered is huge. But do we make right use of it? That's why he's saying the right use. Not only knowledge of the physical thing, but the right use of physical things. Are we making the right use of physical things? Certainly not. For instance, take the invention of the mobile, okay, and the TV. Now distance is conquered. Now can we make, what is the right use of it? To use it for the right purpose. But what do? We use it for making money. Okay? The telephone is sold. A patent is made and sold. That's not the right use at all. Okay? So everything we know, okay. Now for instance, huge issue now today is the materials, the rare material, rare earths we call them. Okay? Like so many elements are there which can retain power. Okay? That's how you have the rechargeable batteries. Okay? But that every metal cannot be recharged. But there are some special, which are called rare earths. Okay? So, and that is given and not given free. It is sold. So that's a wrong use. So Swami is mentioning also, not only knowledge is defective, but even our use of knowledge is defective. Okay? He's pointing out. Right use of the material be discovered by physical science, and an outward knowledge alone are made possible by the mastery of physical and mechanical processes alone. Even if we are master, now we know, for instance, how to tap nuclear energy. Okay? We are masters of that now. Okay? But that's not enough knowledge. Knowledge is not enough. Because even in nuclear science, we are making so many mistakes. Yeah? The reactor that exploded in Russia, okay? The reactor that there is a problem in Fukuyama in Japan, okay? So there are so many mistakes around. Okay? So that's not the right knowledge, half knowledge. Even when you are master, to know, to use rightly. So again he is using, see, not only knowledge, but you must know how to use that knowledge. Okay? To know, to use rightly, we must go beyond the truth of physical phenomenon and process. We must know what is within and behind it. What is within and behind it, even the physical things. For we are not merely embodied minds. There is a spiritual being, a spiritual principle, a spiritual plane of nature. Even nature, not only human beings, but nature also has a spiritual plane. The cosmic divine is there behind nature. Okay? Into that, we have to heighten our force of consciousness, to widen by that still more largely, even universally and infinitely, our range of being is referring to the cosmic consciousness. We can have a cosmic consciousness, not limited to body-mind life. Our aura can expand and become universal. It can include, when the aura increases, our consciousness also increases to any length. Remember the experience of Mother, 2-3 miles outside in the sea when she was coming by boat from Colombo. She felt that she is entering Sevenfold's aura. Okay? So that is cosmic consciousness. For we are not merely embodied minds. There is a spiritual being, a spiritual principle, a spiritual plane of nature. Into that we have to heighten our force of consciousness, to widen by that still more largely, even universally and infinitely, our range of being. So when you expand your consciousness universally and infinitely, you become Samrat. When you are master of your own self, you are Swarat. But when you become master of the universe, then you are Samrat. Okay. Our range of being and our field of action, to take up by that our lower life and use it for greater ends and on a larger plan. Which is the lower life? Body-mind life. That's the lower life. The higher life is all when your consciousness rises to the spiritual planes and even higher. And use it for greater ends on a larger plan. So when you get spiritual knowledge, how can you use that for greater ends? Very clear in Sevenfold and Gita's view of things. Use their power to help others. Use your knowledge that the divine has given you for enhancing and making more advanced the evolutionary trend. Help. Become an instrument of the divine. That will be the greater end on a larger plan in the light of the spiritual truth of existence. Our labor of mind and struggle of life cannot come to any solution until we have gone beyond the obsessing lead of an inferior nature. We are absolutely obsessed with physical things. Our own body-mind life, we think that that's the ultimate reality. We are not conscious of our soul. Beyond the obsessing lead, your body-mind life is leading you. Okay? But it should be your soul that is leading you. Of an inferior nature. Inferior nature, very clearly again, body-mind life. Level 1. Integralized our natural being. Which is the natural being? Body-mind life. So we use the word nature, the natural being in that sense. Okay. Our natural being is the body-mind life. In the being and consciousness learn to utilize our natural instruments. Natural instruments, again body-mind life, by the force and by the joy of the spirit. I've lost it. Just 1 minute. Yeah, I've got it. Then only can the constitutional ignorance, the ignorance of the real build of our existence, from which we suffer, change into a true and effective knowledge of our being and becoming. So what is the constitutional ignorance? We do not know what we are constituted of. We are constituted of, as I said, the subconscious, the intraconscious, the superconscious, and the environmental, which is we call it the circumconscious. We are all this, but we don't know. We are the whole universe. That's a constitutional ignorance. And our real will is we are one with the universe. We are one with the Supreme. That we don't know. Okay? So that's what we need to say. Then only can the constitutional ignorance, the ignorance of the real build of our existence, from which we suffer, change into a true and effective knowledge of our being and becoming. So, the Mayavadin and the Buddhists are rejecting the becoming. But we should not reject the becoming, we should include that in our knowledge. That's what it is. Okay? Being and becoming is clear. Being is the permanent part of you. Becoming is the impermanent part of you. Okay? For what we are is spirit. We are not body, mind, life alone. For what we are is spirit. At present, using mind predominantly, life and body subordinately, with matter for our original field, but not our only field of experience. We are using our body with matter for our original field, but not our only field of experience. Original field is the matter. So, we are utilizing our body, but that's not the only field of experience. But this is only at present. At present. Our imperfect mental instrumentation is not the last word of our possibilities. It is again stressing that we have to go beyond the mind. For there are in us dormant, sleeping, unmanifested, inherent. Dormant is a French word, dormir. Dormir means to sleep. Okay? So, dormant or invisibly and imperfectly active. So it is not, even if it is not sleeping, even if it is active, it is active. Many people, they have the psychic influence. Okay? But, so their psychic is not sleeping, it is acting, but it is not being able to guide you perfectly. Okay? So, that's why either sleeping or not sleeping but active imperfectly. Other principles beyond mind and closer to the spiritual nature, there are more direct powers and luminous instruments. What are these luminous instruments? Spiritual sight, drishti, shruti, we can hear also. Okay? And these are subtle senses. Okay? Intuition, all the other luminous instruments, much more luminous than our physical senses. There is a higher status. There are greater ranges of dynamic action, those that belong to our present physical, vital, mental existence. These can become our own status, part of our being. When you go to spiritual levels of consciousness, you can use these superior instrumental faculties. They can be principles, powers and instruments of our own enlarged nature. But for that, it is not enough to be satisfied with a vague or an ecstatic ascent into spirit, or a formless exaltation to the touch of its infinities. So what is Swami saying? Even if you go to a spiritual level of consciousness, it's not enough. That's what he's saying. It is not enough to be satisfied with a vague or even an ecstatic ascent into spirit. Ecstatic ascent of spirit, even that is not enough. You must know how to use it in the physical world. Or a formless exaltation through the touch of its infinity. Their principle has to evolve. Evolve where? In life. Their principle has to evolve. As life has evolved, as mind has evolved, and organized its own instrumentation, its own satisfaction. So, these intuition, spiritual levels of consciousness must become absolutely manifested and operational in the physical field. Then Swami will be satisfied. Then we shall possess the true constitution of our being, and we shall have conquered the ignorance. Okay. So that's what he's saying. Now, quickly, I'll just read the summary of what he's saying, and then we'll go on to the next paragraph. The mind of man is not a true instrument of knowledge. I'm reading the summary in my own words. It becomes slightly easier. The mind of man is not a true instrument of knowledge. Even the highest intelligence is a half knowledge. Scientific knowledge of the physical world may be sufficient for practical life. It is not enough for man preparing to spiritualize himself. For the normal man, yes, enough, but not for the man making ready for spiritual life. To go beyond the physical world, we must know what is beyond, behind, and above. Beyond in the physical world, behind the intraconscious, and above the superconscious. Man has a soul, a spiritual entity. There are subtler and more powerful instruments of knowledge within him. It is not enough to experience these once, or feel their influence, or have some touch of these ecstasies. He must discover those splendors and use them for practical life in the world. These hidden principles must be operative in daily life. The conquest of ignorance may then become possible. When we know what is behind, above and around, we can be said to have lost our constitutional ignorance. This is what is said. Now we go to the next paragraph. The next paragraph, Sima, do you have the text with you? Maybe not. So then, in that case, Kiran, can you read?
Yes, that I have the text with me.
Okay, then read. The conquest of constitutional ignorance.
The conquest of our constitutional ignorance cannot be complete, cannot become integrally dynamic if we have not conquered our psychological ignorance. First, the two are bound up together. Our psychological ignorance consists in a limitation of our self-knowledge to that missing way or superficial stream of our being, which is the conscious waking self. Each part of our being is an original flux of formless or only half-formulated movement carried on in an automatic continuity, supported and held together by an active surface memory and a passive underlying consciousness in its flow from moment to moment of time, organized and interpreted by our vision and our witnessing and participating intelligence. Behind it is an occurred existence and energy of our secret being, without which the superficial consciousness and activity could not have existed or acted. In matter, when an activity is manifest, inconscient in the outside of things which is or we know, for the ingrained consciousness in matter is secret, subliminal, not manifest in the inconscient form and the involved energy. But in all, consciousness has become partly manifest, partly aware. But this consciousness is held and imperfect, is bound by its habitual self-limitation and moves its restricted circle, except when there are flashes, information, or observing from the secrecy within us, which break the limits of the formation, flow beyond them, or widen the circle. But these occasional Visitations cannot enlarge us far beyond our present capacity are not enough to revolutionize our status. That can only be done if we can bring into it the higher undeveloped life and power potential in our being and get them consciously and normally into play. For this, we must be able to draw freely from those ranges of our being to which they are making, but which are at present subconscious or rather secretly intraconscious and subconscious or else superconscious to us. Or the yet more that is also possible, we must enter into this inner and higher part of ourselves by an inward plunge or deceptive penetration and bring back with us to the surface their secrets. Or achieving a still more radical change of our consciousness, we must learn to live within and no longer on the surface and be and act from the inner depth and from a soul that has become sovereign over the nature.
So, now he is bringing in another ignorance. He is bringing in the psychological ignorance. I told you there are 7 ignorances which he will discuss detailed manner in another chapter. But now he is talking about psychological ignorance. And what is psychological ignorance? That's what he is discussing here. Okay? So, the conquest of our constitutional ignorance. Okay? That means to say, our constitution, we have already discussed what is constitutional ignorance. We are constituted by the everything around us, inside us, above us, and below us. That's our constitutional ignorance. We don't know that we are all these things. The conquest of our constitutional ignorance cannot be complete, cannot become integrally dynamic. What does it mean by that? That means you have power to change that. Okay? Dynamic means now I don't have ignorance anymore, I have knowledge. I have the complete knowledge of what I am constituted of. Okay? Dynamic. Not theoretical, but positive. I can use that and change myself. That is dynamic. Simply knowing is not dynamic. It is passive. Okay? So, mostly if you go to the self, okay, you have knowledge, but that knowledge is passive. It's not active. That's why Sevenfold calls it a negative status. When you can use that knowledge of the self, you have to go a little higher up. And the higher you go, the more power you have to use it at the bottom in your body, mind, life. So that's it has become integrally dynamic. If we have not conquered our psychological ignorance, for the two are bound up together. Now I told you, and I will repeat that also, that these 7 ignorances, there is a good deal of overlapping of each other. The constitutional ignorance and the psychological ignorance, there is an overlapping. Okay? What is psychological ignorance? We don't know from where we come, which parts. The psychological means what are parts of my consciousness. Okay? I have a mind, but I also have an inner mind. Do I know that? No, I don't. Okay? I have a vital, but I also have an inner vital. Do I know that? I don't. Then I have a body, but I also have a subtle body in which I can go out. When I am in sleeping, I can go out in my subtle body and visit all sorts of other places. Okay? Many people have had the experience of out-of-body experiences. That is the subtle body. You go out in your subtle body. So that also we don't know. So that is psychological ignorance. But as I said, to a certain extent, there is an overlapping of the psychological ignorance and the constitutional ignorance. And Swami is saying that because he is saying the two are bound together. Both of them go together. Our psychological ignorance, what it is now he is explaining, consists in a limitation of our self-knowledge, not world knowledge, self-knowledge. Science is world knowledge, but self-knowledge is, I know what I am, I know from where I come, I know my real soul, and I know also the body-mind life, the nature of my body-mind life. That is self-knowledge. To that little wave or superficial stream of our being, which is that little wave or superficial stream of our being, again, outer nature of body, mind and life. That's a little wave or superficial stream of our being, which is a conscious waking self. When you are in a waking consciousness, you are not spiritually awake. You are physically awake, but you are spiritually sleeping still. This is also the philosophy of a gentleman called Gurdjieff. Okay? Gurdjieff was a Russian man, and he used to live in London. And he had this psychological, he said that our waking life is really a sleep. Exactly what the Gita says. Okay? The Gita also says the same thing, that we are actually sleeping spiritually. Waking conscious physically, but sleeping spiritually. So, that's it. Conscious waking self is a limited being. This part of our being is an original flux or formless or only half formulated movements carried on in an automatic continuity, supported and held together by an active support surface memory and a passive underlying consciousness in its flow from moment to moment of time, organized and interpreted by our reason and our witnessing and participating intelligence. So he is saying that, let us say, our body, all our actions are actually part of universal material movement. Okay? He is saying that our vital movements are only part of the universal vital movements. Okay? Our thoughts are only small parts of universal mind movements. That's what he's saying. Okay? So, carried on by an automatic continuity, because the universe, physically, vitally, mentally, is constantly moving. So that's why it is automatic continuity, supported and held together by an active surface memory and a passive underlying consciousness in its flow from moment to moment of time, organized and interpreted by our reason and our witnessing and participating intelligence. Now note the words. Witnessing intelligence does not participate. The witnessing intelligence is only watching. Okay? But participating intelligence, our normal consciousness. We are participating in our thoughts, we are participating in our vital activities, we are constantly identified with them. Okay? So, both the consciousnesses, that's what we really are. Okay? Witnessing and participating. Opposites. Witnessing is only seeing, not participating. And it's like you are watching a game, you are witnessing a game. But when you participate, you are part of the game. Okay? So exactly like that. Suppose you are watching a football match, you are a witness, but you are not a participant. So what is you? You are participating in what? You are participating in your mental thoughts, your vital movements, and your body action. You think that you are doing. That's participating. So when you are participating, you are in ignorance. When you are witnessing, then you are slightly less ignorant. You are in beginning of knowledge. That's the self. Behind it is an occult existence. Occult is normally called hidden. Okay? That which is hidden to us. Occult existence and energy of our secret being, without which the superficial consciousness and activity could not have existed or acted. Now look at that. The universe is actually supporting you in every way. Okay? Your physical body has come from matter. If matter is not there, your body cannot exist. So matter is the universal matter. So the universe is actually not only creating you, but even supporting you. Because matter is giving you food. So it is supporting you. First of all, it has created you. Matter has created your body, and it is supporting it with food. And that food also is matter. Okay? So, could not have existed. In matter only, an activity is manifest, inconscient in the outside of things, which is all we know. But the indwelling consciousness in matter is secret. Which is an indwelling consciousness? The psychic body. In matter is secret, subliminal. Subliminal below the surface. Not manifested in the inconscient form and in involved energy. But in us, consciousness has become partly manifest, partly aware. But this consciousness is hedged and imperfect. Hedge, what is a hedge? It's a boundary, usually with plants. Okay. Suppose your house, you are putting a hedge around the house to say that this is my property, that is hedged. But it is limiting. All hedges are limiting. Okay, so that's what Zen is saying. Hedged and imperfect. It is bound by its habitual self-limitation and moves in a restricted circle. Naturally, when you are limiting yourself, you are moving only in a restricted circle. Except when there are flashes, intimations, or upsurgings from the secrecy within us, which break the limits of the formation or flow beyond them and widen the circle. That he is referring to spiritual experiences. Suddenly you feel a psychic moment. When everything is beautiful, that's a psychic emergence. But it goes back immediately again. Same thing spiritually also. One can experience these things for very short periods of time and also for longer periods. So they are the flashes, intimations and upsurgings. He is speaking of spiritual experiences for a very short length of time. From the secrecy within us, which break the limits of the formation and flow beyond them and widen the circle. So, you have experienced the higher planes for a very short time, but it completely changes you. You remember it. You don't have the experience anymore, but you remember its influence. It is so powerful. You can't forget when you have that experience. Except when there are flashes, intimations, upsurgings from the secrecy within us, which break the limits of formation and flow beyond them and widen the circle. But these occasional visitations cannot enlarge us far beyond our present capacities, are not enough to revolutionize our status. They can be great helps, but they don't change you dynamically. That can only be done if we can bring into it the higher undeveloped lives. What are the undeveloped lives? He spoke of possibilities and instruments. Intuition, spiritual sight, spiritual hearing, drishti, shruti, all these are undeveloped lives and powers, potential in our being, and get them consciously and normally into play. So the intuition and your subtle senses must become very operational in your waking consciousness. For this must be able to draw freely from those ranges of our being to which they are native. These powers are there at a higher level. They are there at the lower level also, but undeveloped, okay, inherent, hiding, but which are at present subconscious, or rather secretly intraconscious and circumconscious, or else superconscious to us. So that's it. Now he is using the words very correctly. Subconscious is also part of us. Intraconscious is subliminal or the inner being. That also is part of ourselves. Okay. The intraconscious is the inner mind, inner vital, inner physical or subtle physical. That's the intraconscious. And behind these inner mind, inner vital, inner physical is a psychic being, deep inside. And circumconscious, the aura around us, the world around us, or else superconscious to us, that which is above us. The self is above us. All the spiritual planes are above us. Or the yet more, that is also possible, we must enter into these inner and higher parts of ourselves. All these are part of yourself. By an inward plunge or disciplined penetration and bring back with us to the surface of the secrets. What is a disciplined penetration? Yoga. You have to follow a discipline and you pierce these limitations and hedges and limits and you get the spiritual knowledge. And bring back with us to the surface of the secrets. Their secrets. Or achieving. Normally what happens in spiritual experience, you get them. Your being is going to them and experiencing, but when your being comes back home again, those powers that you have seen remain up only. They don't come down with you. You have a memory of them, but they don't come down. The power that you have experienced above is not operative in your body, mind, life when you come down. Only when that consciousness becomes permanent, then you have the power. Or achieving a still more radical change of our consciousness, we must learn to live within and no longer on the surface, and be and act from the inner depths and from a soul that has become sovereign over our nature. Only when the spiritual experience becomes permanent, then some control over the nature can come. That's what is party. Okay. So we have done 2 paras, but that's the, we have already crossed our time, 8:43. So we stop here today. Next time we'll continue with that part of us which we can strictly call subconscious. He's going to examine now all the subconscious, the interconscious and the superconscious. So, au revoir everybody. Have a nice day. I'll make a note that we are at this point.
Thank you, Ranga.
For everybody.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Okay, au revoir.